My brother stole my promotion while I covered his mistakes, so I took his position, exposed his lies, and left him watching his life collapse. I'm a 26-year-old guy who's always been the dependable one, at home, at work, everywhere people seem to need me. My older brother, Jason, had this effortless charm that somehow let him skate through life, while everyone expected me to pick up the pieces he left behind. At work, he'd miss deadlines, botch client emails, or forget important follow-ups, and I'd be the one staying late to clean up the mess. At home, he'd shrug off responsibilities, fixing his car, paying bills, even helping with family errands, and somehow, my parents just assumed I'd do it all. It wasn't that I minded helping, at first. I liked being reliable. But over time, it started to feel like my effort didn't matter, like I was invisible under the shadow of his charisma. I remember one evening, my phone buzzing constantly, with messages from both work and my mom. "Jason forgot the report again. Can you handle it?" my mom asked, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I gritted my teeth, my hands shaking slightly as I typed a reply, "I'll take care of it." My chest tightened as I realized this wasn't just a favor anymore, it was expected. At work, colleagues would casually say, "Jason's so natural at presentations," while my own weeks of preparation were overlooked. I'd smile and nod, swallowing the frustration, pretending I didn't notice the double standard. Even in my apartment, the hum of the ceiling fan and the faint smell of leftover coffee couldn't distract me from the simmering resentment building inside me. The more I covered for him, the more invisible I became. My efforts weren't just unnoticed, they were taken for granted. I'd spend late nights rewriting his slides or correcting his mistakes, while he got praised for handling the project so well. The crushing weight of obligation settled into my bones, and for the first time, I felt a gnawing bitterness towards someone I was supposed to love. And yet, I didn't say anything. I didn't confront him. I just kept doing what everyone expected, even though inside, I was slowly burning out. It all felt like a carefully staged show, where I was the invisible background actor, and Jason got to take the spotlight, smiling and basking in praise I should have earned. That night, sitting alone at my kitchen table with my laptop open and my fingers hovering over the keyboard, I wondered how long I could keep being the responsible one before I finally snapped. It wasn't just at home or work, it was everywhere Jason went, like he had this uncanny ability to charm people while leaving chaos behind. Every missed deadline, every forgotten email, every minor catastrophe somehow bounced back to me. I remember the Tuesday when a client called, furious that their contract was full of errors. I spent 3 hours on the phone, walking them through the fixes while Jason lounged in the break room, chatting with coworkers like nothing had happened. The humiliation stung, but I told myself it was part of being the responsible one. I kept thinking, I'll be recognized eventually, people will see my effort. At family dinners, it was even worse. Mom would gush about Jason's leadership skills and how proud she was of his career trajectory. I smiled through the praise, quietly resenting the way my work and sacrifices faded into the background. "He's just so natural at everything," she said, and I forced a laugh, nodding along, feeling like my voice didn't exist. Dad would make a vague compliment, something like, "It's good you're helping out," but it sounded more like a reminder than appreciation. Every word, every gesture, felt like salt in a wound I couldn't show. I began to notice a pattern. Jason thrived on the accolades, and I became the safety net he didn't even acknowledge. At work, the tension built further. I'd redo presentations he messed up, rewrite reports with glaring mistakes, and even send emails in his name to avoid embarrassment for the team. Yet when praise came, it never mentioned me. "Jason really handled this well," they'd say, and I'd bite my tongue, smiling like nothing was wrong. Sometimes I stayed in the office long after everyone left, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, the faint smell of printer toner and stale coffee mixing with my anxiety. I was tired. I was frustrated. I was slowly learning that loyalty without acknowledgement was suffocating. I started to wonder if anyone would ever see the sacrifices I was making, or if I was destined to quietly bear the weight while Jason collected the rewards. That thought lingered in my mind as I walked home that night, the city lights blurring past, the cold wind biting my cheeks. I clenched my fists, a mix of anger and exhaustion coiling in my chest, knowing something had to change soon. But I didn't know how or when. And that uncertainty made the next storm feel inevitable. I had been working at the company for nearly 5 years, pouring every ounce of energy into my projects, staying late nights, and volunteering for tasks no one else wanted. I thought the promotion was finally within reach. I had handled client crises, led presentations, and even taken on Jason's assignments when he couldn't find the time. The night before the official announcement, I stayed in the office until past midnight, double-checking the quarterly report, making sure every detail was perfect. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, my fingers stiff from typing, my coffee gone cold in a mug that smelled faintly of burnt sugar. I could almost taste the satisfaction I expected, the validation of all the invisible work I had done. But there was this gnawing unease that I couldn't shake. Jason had been acting unusually helpful lately, offering to assist me with tasks and asking questions that seemed innocuous. I brushed it off at first, thinking maybe he was trying to step up, maybe finally learning responsibility. Friends at work told me, "Don't worry, you've earned this. Nobody works harder than you." I clung to that, repeating it like a mantra as I went home, thinking that at last, I'd get my moment. On the morning of the announcement, the office felt charged with anticipation. Colleagues whispered in clusters, the hum of computers and printers blending into a tense soundtrack. I straightened my tie, rehearsing a quiet smile, trying to keep my excitement from showing too much. Then, the email came. My heart sank. Jason's name was at the top. He had somehow stolen the promotion I had worked for, the one I had prepared for down to the last detail. I blinked at the screen, feeling my stomach twist into knots. My hands shook as I reread the message, searching for a mistake, a typo, anything that could explain it. My boss's note praised him for leadership and initiative, language I had spent weeks embodying. Every ounce of frustration I had swallowed over the years came rushing back. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I shut my laptop, took a deep breath, and forced a smile when Jason walked by, casually congratulating himself. "Looks like my hard work finally paid off, huh?" he said with that smug grin. I nodded silently, trying not to let the betrayal show. But inside, a storm was already brewing, and I knew this wasn't the end, it was only the beginning. That morning, I walked into the office feeling a mix of disbelief and simmering anger. My mind replayed the previous night's email over and over, how Jason had taken credit for my work, the promotion I had poured years into now handed to him like it was his right. I tried to act normal, but every step felt heavy, like walking through water. My colleagues greeted him with congratulations, smiles plastered on their faces, while I nodded quietly, feeling invisible again. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, and the faint hum of the air conditioner couldn't drown out the pounding of my heart. I sat at my desk, pretending to work, while Jason strolled by, exuding confidence, chatting with our boss as if he had earned it fair and square. "Thanks for covering my last project, by the way," he said casually, smirking. My jaw tightened. I clenched my hands under the desk, trying not to snap at him. The words felt like a punch to the gut, years of covering his mistakes, staying late, sacrificing sleep and weekends, boiled down to a casual thanks. I wanted to shout, to throw my laptop across the room, to expose everything in front of everyone, but I swallowed it. By lunch, whispers were circulating about how efficient Jason had been during the last quarter. I felt my blood pressure spike as I realized just how thoroughly he had rewritten history. Every report he submitted, every client email he claimed as his own, had cemented his image as the shining star, while my contributions remained invisible. My coworkers' approving glances at him were like salt in a fresh wound. I went to the break room, trying to calm myself, gripping the edge of the counter so tightly that my knuckles whitened. The smell of instant coffee and leftover sandwiches was nauseating, mingling with the taste of frustration in my mouth. I felt cornered, powerless, and more than a little angry. As I left the break room, Jason waved at me with that infuriating grin again. "Don't take it too hard, man. There's always next time, right?" he said, chuckling. I forced a smile, but inside, the storm I had been holding back all these years began to gather strength. I knew one thing for certain: this wasn't over, and I couldn't let it end like this. After that morning, I realized I had to play it smart. Losing my temper in front of everyone would only make me look bitter or unprofessional, and Jason would use that to further cement his false image. So I smiled, nodded, and went through the motions, pretending everything was fine. I greeted him casually, even joked about minor office mishaps, but underneath, a fire was burning. Each time I corrected one of his errors quietly, submitted a report to cover his gaps, or helped a client he'd mishandled, the weight in my chest grew heavier. I felt like a ghost in my own life, moving through the motions while he basked in the light I had earned. At my desk, I started documenting everything. Emails, spreadsheets, timestamps. I meticulously collected proof of every project he had taken credit for. The fluorescent office lights flickered softly above me as I scrolled through files, my fingers hovering over the mouse, heart pounding with anticipation. I whispered to myself, "This ends soon." But the tension was suffocating. Each time he walked by, chuckling with coworkers, I felt my blood boil. How could someone so reckless, so dishonest, appear so perfect in the eyes of everyone around him? Even outside of work, the shadow of this betrayal followed me. I replayed meetings in my mind, analyzing every interaction, every opportunity one had missed for recognition. Friends asked if I was okay, and I laughed it off, saying, "Yeah, just busy." But inside, I was planning. Every small comment he made, every smug smile he flashed, became a piece of the puzzle I was building. By the end of the week, I realized pretending to be fine was only making my anger sharper, more focused. I couldn't let Jason continue to thrive on my efforts. I had to act, but I needed patience, precision, and proof. Sitting alone in my apartment that night, the hum of the refrigerator and the distant city traffic filling the silence, I clenched my fists, knowing the moment to strike was coming. But would I be ready when the opportunity arrived? It happened almost by accident. I was digging through old project folders, double-checking deadlines, when I noticed a pattern in Jason's emails. Every time a report was submitted late or a client question went unanswered, there was a chain of correspondence showing that I had been the one fixing it, often hours before he submitted his work. My heart raced as I realized the magnitude of what I'd uncovered: timestamps, email trails, and project logs that clearly proved he had taken credit for everything I did. The proof was undeniable. For the first time, I felt the power shift in my hands. I sat back in my chair, the buzzing office lights above me blending into a blur, my mind spinning. The adrenaline made my palms sweat as I thought, I can finally expose him. I could see the years of invisibility, the overtime, the sleepless nights, all culminating into a single weapon: evidence. My phone buzzed with a message from a coworker asking for help on a minor task, and I barely noticed, so absorbed I was in plotting my next move. The office felt heavier, the air thick with tension as if it knew what was coming. Jason strolled past my desk with that smug grin, clearly unaware of what I had found. "Busy night again, huh?" he said casually, tossing a pen onto my keyboard. I forced a calm smile, nodding, while inside, a storm was building. I had gone from powerless to in control in a matter of minutes. Every injustice he had committed, every slight he had gotten away with, was about to be turned back on him. I began drafting a plan. Step 1: gather all evidence systematically. Step 2: ensure management would see the full scope of his lies. Step 3: reclaim what was rightfully mine and expose him publicly. As I closed the last spreadsheet and leaned back, the hum of the computer and the faint smell of printer ink surrounded me, a quiet prelude to what was about to unfold. And yet, despite this newfound advantage, I felt a sliver of fear. Could I pull it off without losing my cool? Could I make him pay for years of taking credit while keeping my own reputation intact? The answer would come soon enough, and nothing would ever be the same after this. Once I had the evidence in hand, I realized patience was my greatest weapon. I couldn't just storm into the office and scream about everything Jason had done. He was too slick, and any outburst would make me look unstable. I needed a plan, a precise, methodical approach that would leave no doubt in anyone's mind who deserved the credit. I spent nights at my apartment, surrounded by spreadsheets, emails, and reports, mapping out every single instance where he had taken credit for my work. The faint hum of the ceiling fan and the aroma of leftover coffee kept me company as I meticulously organized the evidence. Every timestamp, every client email, every missed task he had handled became a piece of the puzzle. I started practicing how I would present the facts, rehearsing my tone, my words, even the timing. I wanted it to hit hard but remain professional, undeniable. I imagined my boss reading the documentation, Jason trying to explain himself, and the slow realization dawning on everyone that he had been living a lie for years. My chest tightened with both anticipation and anxiety. I had never confronted him like this before. The office itself seemed to pulse with tension whenever I thought about it, the fluorescent lights and the faint buzz of computers mirroring my racing heartbeat. Meanwhile, Jason remained blissfully unaware. He walked through the office like he owned it, casually chatting with colleagues, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, unaware that his entire facade was about to crumble. The arrogance in his posture and the smugness in his smile only fueled my resolve. I imagined the moment when his carefully constructed image would shatter, and I could finally step into the recognition I had earned. I knew I had to be patient, but the anticipation made every second feel like torture. Every morning commute, the smell of exhaust in distant coffee shops, every ding of my phone, reminded me of the power I now held. I was ready. All I needed was the perfect moment to strike, and I could feel it coming closer with every tick of the clock. The day finally arrived. I walked into the office with a folder in my hand, thick with printouts, emails, and project logs, my heartbeat echoing in my chest like a drum. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, and the scent of stale coffee from the break room lingered in the air. I passed Jason's desk, his smug grin lighting up the room as he waved casually. "Morning." "Ready for the big meeting?" he said, completely unaware that his world was about to crumble. I nodded politely, forcing a calm expression while my fingers itched to unleash what I had prepared. As our boss called everyone into the conference room, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. This was it. I laid the folder on the table, my hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I think it's time we reviewed the project logs and emails from the past 6 months, I said, voice calm but firm. I watched as Jason's confident smile faltered ever so slightly. Our boss began flipping through the pages, eyes narrowing, and I could feel the tension in the room spike. Every timestamp, every corrected mistake, every instance where Jason had claimed credit was laid bare. Jason's attempts to explain himself came out as stammered, defensive words. I didn't mean, well, you know," he faltered, voice cracking, unable to construct a believable story. Colleagues exchanged shocked glances, whispers of disbelief filling the room. The air felt heavy, almost tangible, charged with the realization that his years of manipulation and theft had been exposed. I could see the color drain from his face, the arrogance replaced by panic and desperation. Inside, I felt a wave of satisfaction and vindication, but I kept my composure, letting the evidence speak for itself. The boss leaned back, sighing, and muttered, "I think we have some serious discussions to have." Jason's entire demeanor collapsed, and for the first time, he was no longer the golden child in everyone's eyes. I had anticipated this moment, but the rush of seeing it unfold, watching him unravel publicly, was more intense than I imagined. And as we left the meeting room, I realized that exposing him was just the first step. The real challenge, and the real payoff, was still ahead. After the confrontation, I expected relief. I thought that once the truth was out, the tension would lift, and I'd finally feel vindicated. But reality hit harder than I imagined. The fallout wasn't just professional, it was personal. My parents, who had always subtly favored Jason, were confused and conflicted. My mom called that evening, her voice trembling. I don't know who to believe anymore," she said, leaving me feeling guilty despite having done nothing wrong. At work, while most colleagues quietly congratulated me, a few whispered behind my back, questioning if I had overstepped or been too harsh. The pressure weighed on me. I spent nights staring at the ceiling in my small apartment, the hum of the fridge and distant city traffic pressing against my thoughts. My hands shook as I scrolled through emails, replaying the confrontation, second-guessing every word I'd said. Doubts crept in, Had I handled it correctly? Was I being fair, or had I let anger guide me too much? Jason, meanwhile, was spiraling. I could see it in the way he avoided eye contact with colleagues, the stammer in his voice, the frantic pace of his work as he tried to regain control. And yet, despite the satisfaction of seeing him unravel, I felt exhausted, hollow, and unsure of what victory really meant. My friends tried to reassure me, but I couldn't shake the loneliness, the years of resentment, and the weight of being the responsible one who finally spoke up. I walked home one night through the rain, the cold droplets soaking my jacket, mixing with tears I didn't want anyone to see. The streets smelled like wet asphalt, and the city lights reflected off puddles, blurring into a haze of confusion and regret. I felt small, powerless in ways I hadn't anticipated, questioning everything I had sacrificed and whether it was worth the public exposure. For the first time in years, I wondered if winning had come at too high a cost. And yet, as I wiped the rain from my face and looked up at the skyline, a faint spark of determination flickered inside me. I knew this wasn't the end, it was the low point before the climb. But the next move had to be precise, calculated, and final. After nights of restless sleep and endless self-questioning, the moment I had been preparing for finally arrived. Management called me into the office to discuss the fallout from the confrontation, and this time, it wasn't about proving anything, I had already done that. They acknowledged my consistent effort, the countless hours I had devoted to fixing Jason's mistakes, and the clear evidence I had presented. The promotion that had been stolen from me was officially mine, with recognition not only from my boss but from colleagues who had witnessed the unfolding drama. I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders as the room seemed brighter, lighter, the fluorescent office lights buzzing less harshly than before. Sitting at my new desk, I finally allowed myself to exhale. The quiet hum of the computer, the faint scent of coffee from the break room, even the distant sounds of city traffic outside the window felt almost celebratory. I noticed small gestures from coworkers, nods of respect, subtle smiles, an email from a client praising my work, things I had gone years without. Jason, meanwhile, was noticeably diminished, his confident demeanor gone, replaced by nervous glances and tentative movements as he navigated the office. I watched him carefully, noting the change in how people responded to him, the subtle avoidance from colleagues who had once hung on his every word. I reminded myself to stay professional, but inside, a quiet satisfaction coursed through me. Every injustice he had gotten away with, every night I had stayed late to cover his errors, had led to this precise moment. I realized the victory wasn't just about the promotion, it was about reclaiming my self-respect, my authority, and finally standing in the light I deserved. As I typed the first official report under my name, the click of the keys sounded like confirmation of a long overdue justice. Even as the day ended, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The storm had passed, but the ripples were still visible. I knew the next challenge, seeing the full consequences of Jason's actions, was about to unfold, and I was ready to witness it fully. After reclaiming my promotion, I watched Jason's world unravel in ways I had only imagined before. Projects he had once led were reassigned, clients questioned his reliability, and coworkers who had once laughed at his jokes now avoided him. His smug confidence crumbled with each passing day, replaced by desperation and panic. I saw the subtle cracks in his composure, the way his hands trembled during meetings, the nervous way he avoided eye contact, the muttered apologies that felt hollow even to him. The office air seemed heavier when he walked in, colleagues exchanging quick, sympathetic glances that once would have been reserved for me. One afternoon, I overheard him whispering to a coworker, I don't know how this happened. It was supposed to be my project." His voice cracked, a mixture of fear and disbelief, and I couldn't help the small, satisfied smile that tugged at my lips. The same brother who had thrived on taking credit for everything I did was now exposed, struggling to regain control of a world he had manipulated for years. I didn't gloat, at least not openly, I simply observed. The poetic justice was in the quiet collapse, in seeing him confront the consequences of choices he had made without thought for anyone else. Outside work, the effect lingered. Friends and family who had always praised him started noticing the cracks, the gaps in his stories, and the lies that had gone unnoticed for so long. He called me once, voice trembling, trying to explain, to negotiate, to salvage something. I stayed silent, listening but saying nothing, letting him wrestle with the reality he had created for himself. The city hummed outside my apartment window, rain lightly tapping against the glass, a gentle reminder that life moves on, consequences arrive, and fairness, even delayed, has its way of showing up. Sitting at my desk that evening, I reflected on how far I had come, how much I had endured, and how satisfying it was to witness the truth finally catching up to him. And yet, there was still one thing left, my own peace, my own closure, and the final step of reclaiming not just my position, but my life from years of invisible labor and stolen recognition. Sitting at my desk, officially recognized, officially seen, I finally allowed myself to breathe. The hum of the office, the faint aroma of coffee from the break room, the distant chatter of colleagues, all of it felt different now, lighter, almost celebratory. For years, I had carried the weight of Jason's mistakes, the invisible labor that no one acknowledged, and the quiet resentment that festered inside me. Now, for the first time, I felt the freedom that came with justice. It wasn't just about the promotion, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my self-worth, and the recognition I had earned through years of dedication. I thought about Jason, about how he had taken for granted the work I did, how he thrived while I remained invisible. The irony wasn't lost on me, he had been so focused on being the golden child that he never realized the foundation beneath him was built by someone else. Watching him struggle to maintain his crumbling facade was satisfying, yes, but more than that, it was a lesson. I had learned that patience, strategy, and persistence could triumph over arrogance and deceit. I didn't need to gloat, I didn't need revenge to feel complete. In the quiet moments at home, the city lights flickering through my apartment window, I reflected on how far I had come. I realized that empowerment isn't just about winning, it's about recognizing your own value, standing firm when others try to diminish you, and trusting yourself to take the right steps at the right time. I felt lighter, stronger, more alive than I had in years. I even thought about reconciliation, imagining a time when Jason might truly understand his mistakes, but only if he changed. For now, I focused on myself, my growth, and my future. The storm had passed, and I was finally the one standing in the light, no longer invisible, no longer overshadowed, and fully in control of my life. I smiled, feeling a deep, satisfying calm, knowing that the years of struggle had forged me into someone unshakable. And as I closed my laptop that evening, the soft hum of the city around me, I realized something profound. Justice isn't always immediate, but when it comes, it's sweeter than anything you could have imagined.